Guardians, we're all excited for what's coming next. From Marasov to Savathun and the future of our allegiances with the Elixni and Cabal, there's certainly a lot to look forward to and speculate on. But what about the past? What lingering stories or questions elude us? Or have we maybe missed or forgotten over the years? Today, Guardians, we're going to explore such a story, the story of the crashed city, Caer Lerion. Welcome back, Guardians, to another Vanguard Report. Kaz PhD here. Been a while. A lot has happened since my last report. Xur has returned with quite a spectacle in his Dares of Eternity, and a new dungeon of exploration and treasure has been sighted in the Cosmodrome. But I had taken a bit of a break from these reports. For those interested, my community meets fairly regularly outside of these reports, with live streams from my ghost over on the Twitch network most nights, and discussions, prizes, and fireteam requests made through my Discord. Join now, links below, and I'll run you through a dungeon sometime, or you can help me shape the next Vanguard report. I've still been busy, helping Guardians when I can, but I've begun looking back through the archives. In my experience, it is important to do this now and then, not only to refresh our knowledge, but examine it from later perspectives. Sometimes the best way to see ahead is to look behind. That is how I came to the story of Caer Lerion. You see, back during the Red War, some Guardians had found the ruins of what appeared to be a city. Strangely, the ruins were scattered, almost as if the city had fallen from the sky, crashing below. Doing what they did best, the Guardians fought off all surrounding enemies and crafted armor from those ruins. Now, it was a dangerous time. Not all of those Guardians returned. Those who did may not have been the most forthcoming or willing to share their story. It has taken some time, but I managed to piece the story together. As we've seen before, each piece of armor, every Vanguard report and communique, it all tells a story, and whether we know it or not, each story links with another in our destiny. It sounds silly, but sometimes a rumor mentioned in the tower or code phrase carved into a piece of armor can connect to others in unexpected ways. You begin by researching one thing, and suddenly your ghost can't keep up with how many tabs you have open on your datapad. This is an exciting but also daunting part of what I do, piecing all of this together. So what have I found? Caer Lerion was an orbital city built during our Golden Age. It stood as a symbol of peace and seemed to represent what humanity was capable of. Sometime during the collapse, the city fell, crashed. During the early time of the last city, before Cade 6 or even Andal Brask were the Hunter Vanguard, a host of Titans engaged in combat with a warlord in the ruins. The leader of the host was Yagi, another Titan, whose report I was able to find in Vanguard archives. It reads, From Yagi, to Saint 14. Category, 8 sat bounce. Priority, 3. Acting on intel from Hunter Vanguard Aparajita 4, my host made contact with the Lightbearer inhabiting the ruins of Caer Lerion. Recommend classification of said Lightbearer as Warlord. My host engaged, but the target occupied advantageous terrain and our ghost's resurrection times have increased by another 2.8%, a 0.6 increase from my last report. Further analysis is attached to this report. After several waves, a retreat seemed the only tactical option left to us. Before I could issue the command, a new variable entered the field from above. At first, I thought it to be a warsat. My initial assessment proved incorrect. The variable was a Titan, who deployed himself from high ground to deliver an aerial melee assault upon the target. This proved a turning point in the battle, and we were soon able to incapacitate the warlord and prepare him for return to the tower. I've asked the Titan to file his own report, which is also attached. End message. Begin attachment. From Vel Tarlo to Saint 14. Category, 8 sat bounce. Priority 1. I just had the best day of my life. Get ready for this. Now, a colorful story, of course. But let's refresh the facts and then dig deeper. Yagi's hosts engaged in combat with a warlord in the ruins. Unable to find advantageous ground, it was the actions of Vel Tarlo striking into the area which won the day. For those who find that name familiar, Vel Tarlo was one of Eris Morn's fire team. He was a member of the Pilgrim Guard, helping people find and reach the last city. Having saved Eris's life once, he joined her fire team, but was sadly lost on the moon, overwhelmed by light-suppressing Thrall, and finally killed by Alakhul's dark blade. Back when the Lunar Pyramid was discovered, I had a chance to learn more about Vel from Eris. I even helped track down Vel's ghost, Razor, and I hope helped Eris move on from some of her haunted memories. In any case, little is known of the warlord brought in from the ruins, but he was likely one of the last. By the time the last city was getting into swing, the Iron Lords had dealt with most warlords, as far as we know. Another interesting detail is the time between resurrections that Yagi mentioned. There are a few possibilities here, and it took a while to sort out. I had to access Vanguard classified files, transcribe audio recordings, even track down a few lone ghosts, some of whom were very cryptic in their answers. See, one theory involves Yagi's past. Before the events of Caer Lerion, Yagi and his host engaged in other fights, one of which was near the Caspian Sea. Details are fragmented and conflicted, but it seems that Yagi's host were lost or trapped or detained in that fight, with their ghosts returning ahead of them to the tower. The ghosts appeared to have some kind of buzzing contagion about them. Later, Yagi and his team returned. While volunteering to help some new lights clean out Lord Saladin's office, I came across an old journal entry from the speaker mentioning this event. Whatever the corruption was, it concerned him, but he said little more. It reminded me of the events leading up to the return of Lord Saladin, in a time some Guardians have called the Rise of Iron. For those who weren't there, weeks before Saladin's return, Guardians were beginning to notice, and even be inflicted, with a kind of parasite. While it had little impact, it was observable, appearing as a buzzing contagion. As the threat of Siva became much more prevalent, it was assumed this was some kind of early discovery, almost a warning of sorts. So, it is possible that the time between resurrections that Yagi and his ghosts mention are the result of Siva corruption. The Battle of Site 6, the fall of the Iron Lords as told by Lord Saladin, suggests that Siva can overcome the light itself, corrupting Guardians, or at least maybe killing, replacing, controlling them. Back before Anna Bray resurfaced, my ghost was once taken over by Rasputin, warning me of dangers on Mars. It was a frightening, but also enlightening adventure. Of course, another possibility could be the darkness. Not just the usual scapegoat for all that is wrong, we have seen the darkness interfere with our light before. Darkness zones are literal areas where the power is such that light cannot exist there. Perhaps the dark interfered with ghosts and their connection to Guardians in the light. I don't know, Guardian, it kind of chills me. Remind me to do a revive analysis with my ghost. Have you done one recently? Have you noticed any strange patterns? Where was I? Coming back to Caer Lerion, not much is known, sadly. But just like the analysis above, we can infer some detail from what we do know. First, humanity created orbital cities in the Golden Age. Can you imagine that? An entire city. Who lived there? How large was it? What was the purpose? Reports indicate a vague statement that the city represented peace, that its construction was either the result or symbol of peace. But peace among whom? Since no other alien factions were listed or indicated, I presume it means peace among humanity. Perhaps as the Traveler was overhead and as humanity was coming to terms with it, this city was constructed through a global unified effort. We have seen this happen before. Pre-Golden Age records indicate that while the first space stations were made via nationalistic endeavor, that an international space station was once created out of the union of several nations. including those who had been previously on bitter terms. So, perhaps Caer Lerion gives us a glimpse into the Golden Age, into a time of unity. While the Golden Age is often looked at with nostalgia or idyllic longing, it is interesting to see details from this time, from the transition into the best parts of the Golden Age. Another curious detail is the crashing of the city itself. It has been suggested that the city crashed during the collapse, and that does make the most sense. Whether directly or indirectly, the collapse caused most of what had been built up over the Golden Age to be torn apart, destroyed, discarded, lost, and forgotten. So it is possible that the city was directly impacted by the collapse. We have heard reports, as seen in the Constellations and Maracena lore books, of gravity waves and other disruptive forces felt by the collapse. Any of these could have knocked the city out of orbit. Natural decay is another factor. Satellites maintain orbit through a type of perpetual falling. Essentially, they are being pulled toward the planet or moon they are orbiting, but they are moving fast enough to avoid impacting. However, over time, orbits decay. Or more specifically, the gravitational effect overcomes the orbital speed, causing the orbiting object to lose altitude. As it does, it eventually interacts with the atmosphere, if there is one, and crashes. The time it takes depends on the altitude of which the city started. If it was only 200 kilometers or so above the Earth, twice as high as the typically agreed on border with space begins, the crash would only take 1 day, assuming nothing on board the city was boosting its orbital speed. If it was as high as the pre-Golden Age International Space Station, around 400 kilometers, it would have taken 1 year. The increase is exponential, with an object at 900 kilometers staying in orbit for 1,000 years before crashing. We can basically rule out the city being in geostationary orbit. This orbit, 36,000 kilometers above the Earth, is often used for weather and communication satellites. The orbit is special, being at a specific altitude that allows the satellite to orbit as quickly as the Earth turns. Meaning, a satellite at this orbit always looks like it's above the same place on Earth, instead of shooting across the sky. However, Caer Lerion was likely not in this orbit, because natural decay would take much, much longer to occur. I also postulate that it was not in a geostationary orbit because, if it were, the ruins would likely be spread out over a much larger area, and not recognized as ruins as such. There you have it. Caer Lerion was an orbiting city, built sometime during the Golden Age. It represented peace, but sadly fell to Earth after the collapse. It has been a battleground for a long time, with some even making armor out of its ruins. Sadly, little else is known about the city. It makes me wonder, will we ever achieve something like this again? We've been so busy rebuilding and then defending humanity, primarily with the last city, that we haven't really made much headway into expanding to other areas. While we've had good reason for that, namely that we usually lack everything except enemies, things have started to change. We have allies, namely the Awoken, the House of Light Elixni, and Kaido's Cabal. While each has been battered and not in the strongest position, as always, we are strongest together. I firmly believe that our destiny is to expand beyond our current limitations. While we continue to face great threats, we also have amazing technology, people, and ideas at our side. My hope is that the borders of danger which you Guardians are patrolling each and every day are slowly expanded, that we push back our enemies and rebuild what we have lost. In any case, that's my Vanguard report for this week. Appreciate your patience. I've been out in the field and not had a lot of time to put this together. If you're interested in joining our community, check out the links below for our Discord and Twitch, where we are more active more often. I hope your activities do not keep you so busy that you forget to appreciate what we have, and how far we've come. Thank you very much for listening. As always, I ask that you be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.